Okay, we're going to talk about finding the product of a power or a product of powers. Really what that means is multiplying powers. So if you have, a power with a base, something with a base and an exponent, basically, and you're multiplying those things together, you're just going to end up adding the exponents. It's really a simple rule. I want to show you what that looks like. Here are two powers getting multiplied together, and the simplest thing to do is to add the exponents when you're solving these. So 7 to the 5th power times 7 to the 4th power is just going to become 7 to the 5 plus 4. This is what we're doing, which is 7 to the 9th power. Really simple. When you're multiplying exponents, powers, with exponents, you're just going to end up adding the exponents and you get your final answer. And that's really it. And now you can go expand that out, or you can leave it like that for now. Okay, so what about this? X to the 3rd times x to the 6th. Again, we're just going to add these two together, the 3 plus the 6, and you get x to the 9th. And since we don't know what x is, we're just going to leave it like that. Y to the negative 3 times y to the negative 9 becomes y to the negative 3 plus negative 9, which equals y to the negative 12th power. And that's it. Really simple, really straightforward. There's other things that I do want to go over, though, with regard to simplifying a power. In this case, where you see parentheses, you just have to keep in mind that think about the rule with parentheses. Parentheses means multiplication. And if you could think about, there's like a parentheses between this negative 3 and the 4, maybe that will help you remember that you end up multiplying the negative 3 times the 4. So a to the negative 3 raised to the power of 4 becomes a to the negative 12. Here, a to the negative 5th raised to the power of negative 8 becomes a to the positive 40, right? We don't have to write that positive sign, but we're just, a negative times a negative is a positive, right? So this becomes a to the 40th. And a to the 6th raised to the 6th becomes a to the 36th. So pretty straightforward and easy so far. You're just remembering your rules for positive and negative numbers. And if you see a parentheses, that means you have to multiply these two numbers together, and the base stays the same. And let's look at a couple of other types of problems. This is called the power of a product. The reason why is because it's a power, right? Because there's a base and an exponent, but there's a product going on in here. This 3x means the 3 is multiplying by the x as well. So let's just talk about what this all means. I'll show you some examples. Don't be afraid of this because it's really not that bad at all. But again, remembering that the parentheses, when there's an exponent on the outside, the exponent gets distributed to everything inside the parentheses. So what you're doing here is you're raising the 5 to the 3rd power and the x to the 3rd power. Meaning, if you were to rewrite this, it would be 5 to the 3rd times x to the 3rd. Okay? So now what is 5 to the 3rd power? Well, that's 5 times 5 times 5, which is 125. And then x to the 3rd just remains x to the 3rd, because that's x times x times x, which is x to the 3rd. Okay? Let's do another one. Negative 2x to the 2nd power. Well, that means negative 2 gets raised to the 2nd power, and we're going to put those parentheses in because the 2 is within the parentheses, times x to the 2nd power. So what does that mean? Well, this means negative 2 times negative 2 times, and x squared is if we wanted to write that out, becomes, x times x, right? But we really don't need to do that with the x's. But okay, negative 2 times negative 2 becomes positive 4. X times x is x squared, so we could have just kept that the same. And that's it. That's all there is. Let's do with the AB raised to the 7th power. Again, it would be A to the 7th and B to the 7th. And that's all we could do with that, because we're just multiplying A times A times A all 7 times and B times B times B 7 times. So we don't need to do anything with that. So we can leave that as our final answer. So far, these are our final answers. Not too complicated. If you pay attention, replay this, you'll get it no problem. This one, you have to remember, is a negative exponent. So what do we do if there's a negative exponent? Well, first of all, let's distribute this -2. We know this means -4. I'm going to write this in a different color, actually, so it stands out a little bit more. This means -4 raised to the -2. And I'm going to put parentheses there, times D raised to the -2. Okay, so now what do we want to do? Well, to get this exponent right here into a positive, this becomes, in our next step, 1 equals 1 over -4 to the 2 power, the 2nd power, times 1 over D squared, right? Because for both of these, we wanted to put them both under a 1 so that we can make the exponents positive. Okay, now what does that become? Let's see, can you still see this in there? Well, I think I need to write on a different line. This becomes 1 over -4 times -4, which is 16, times 1 over D squared. Or we could simply write it as 1 over 16D squared. And that's our final answer. So it kind of is a reminder of what we learned in other videos with the negative exponents. You have to distribute them first, which is what we were doing up here. When there's a little exponent on the outside, you've got to distribute it to the inside. And then once you distribute it and you see that they're negatives, you put it all under 1. And then, you know, we could have also just put it under 1, 1 and put these under just the 1. That would have been fine too. Or you could break it up separately just like we did. So either way you wanted to do that is fine. But the important thing is to try this with other problems you see in your text. Just remember the negative exponents, it all gets put under a 1. And then in the end, it all comes together under that 1, because these are multiplying by each other. So 1 over 16 times 1 over D squared, you're multiplying it together, so you get 1 over 16D squared. Okay? So practice, practice, practice. There was a lot in this video, but you got this. I just realized that we left this y to the -12th power, and we don't really want to do that. So whenever we have a negative exponent, we put it under a 1, and it becomes y to the 12th power. So go ahead and fix your notes on that one, because again, we're going to change this negative exponent by writing the reciprocal under a 1. That's it.